Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take a stack of recent news analyses, detailed reports, and basically pull out the most important insights for you.
Yeah, we try to connect the dots.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into the pretty turbulent waters of current U.S. politics. Our mission really is to cut through some of the noise, maybe reveal some surprising connections, and hopefully equip you with the deeper understanding of the forces shaping the American political landscape right now.
And what really stands out, I think, is just the sheer breadth of the strategic maneuvering we're seeing. Everything from executive actions that are reshaping federal-state power dynamics to these really intricate plays for electoral advantage. So we'll try to connect those dots between things that might seem separate, helping you understand not just what's happening, but maybe why it matters and, what the deeper implications might be for American democracy.
Okay, we've got a lot to explore there. So maybe a good place to kick things off is looking at some of these notable instances where executive power is being, exerted in ways that are definitely raising some eyebrows, creating new tensions.
Yeah, and this brings up a really fundamental question, doesn't it? Like, how far can executive authority actually go before it fundamentally alters that balance of power, especially when you think about local and state governance? It's a tension we're seeing play out, right now.
Absolutely. Just consider the situation in Washington, D.C., for instance.
Yeah.
We saw former President Trump deploy, 800 National Guard troops?
Yeah, 800.
To occupy D.C., citing what was called a nonexistent crime emergency.
Right, nonexistent.
And their duties apparently range from, clearing homeless encampments to guarding national monuments. Monuments that, by all accounts, weren't even under threat. And just generally keeping order. And the crucial thing here, I think, is that this is all done against the express wishes of D.C.'s elected mayor, Muriel Bowser.
Who couldn't stop them?
Exactly. Because of D.C.'s unique status, she had no power to stop them.
And the fallout from that action is, it's quite telling. It's significantly fueled these new calls for D.C. statehood.
Right.
The argument being, look, if D.C. were a state, a governor could probably preempt a presidential nationalization of the Guard, or at least challenge it more effectively in court.
Makes sense.
But, as you might guess, Republicans have opposed this. Largely, the fear cited is that D.C. would likely elect 2 Black Democrats to the Senate, and that would shift the balance of power there.
Okay.
And looking ahead, the former president has hinted at doing similar things in what he reportedly called crime-ridden hellholes.
Right, I remember that term.
Naming large blue cities like Baltimore, Chicago, L.A., New York, Oakland, places that also happen to have pretty substantial Black populations that predominantly voted against him.
So the perception is what? Intimidation?
Well, the perceived plan or the concern is that it's meant to intimidate residents, maybe provoke mass arrests if protests happen. That's the worry being voiced.
And we've already heard some pretty strong reactions from state and city leaders to that kind of rhetoric, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. Maryland Governor Wes Moore, he viewed it as using honorable men and women as pawns to distract us from his policies. Pretty strong words.
Yeah.
And Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson basically urged the former president, release anti-violence funds instead of intervening with troops.
Right. Focus on the actual problem.
Exactly. And that willingness to sort of push the boundaries of executive authority, it extends into other areas, too, like this controversial ruling from the U.S. Court of Appeals for D.C.
Yes, the foreign aid one.
That's the one. This court recently ruled that the administration can terminate billions of dollars of foreign aid that was actually appropriated by Congress.
Even though the Impoundment Act of 1974 explicitly forbids it.
Explicitly forbids it, yeah.
That seems like a huge shift in how the executive branch interacts with congressional spending. So what was the background there again?
Well, the background is that Trump had frozen U.S.-side spending back in January. That led the grant recipients themselves to sue.
Okay.
And initially, a district judge actually ordered the funds released.
But then the appeals court stepped in.
Right. The appeals court, with judges Karen LaCraft Henderson, a Bush appointee, and Gregory Katsas of the Trump appointee, they ruled the plaintiffs didn't even have standing to sue.
Standing. So basically they said these groups who were directly harmed by the frozen funds weren't the right people to bring the lawsuit.
Pretty much. Which is, a critical legal maneuver because it let the court avoid ruling on the core constitutional question about executive power versus congressional power.
Ah, I see. Sidestepping the main issue.
Exactly. And Judge Florence Pan, a Biden appointee, she dissented pretty strongly, called the majority's reasoning very artificial, given even the direct harm.
Mm-hmm.
And her dissent really highlighted that the majority's opinion, quote, misconstrues the separation of powers claim and allows executive branch officials to evade judicial review of constitutionally impermissible actions.
Wow. So if you connect that to the bigger picture, it certainly suggests potentially an erosion of Congress's power of the purse and maybe an expansion of unchecked executive power.
Speaking of, well, unchecked power, we've also seen efforts to influence cultural institutions, right? The Smithsonian.
Yes, a significant push to essentially censor Smithsonian museums.
Yeah.
The former president signed an executive order telling them to remove what he called bad think.
Bad think.
Or improper ideology. And what's fascinating, or perhaps concerning, is the specific target, divisive, race-centered ideology.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Well, it suggests that exhibits dealing with things like slavery,
Right.
the treatment of slaves, the slave-owning founding fathers, Washington, Jefferson, or the historical treatment of Native Americans, Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans, that these might be unwelcome.
So controlling the narrative.
Controlling the narrative.
Okay.
And that term bad think, it's notably borrowed from George Orwell's 1984.
Which signals an attempt not just to challenge, but maybe to actively suppress and redefine the stories told by public institutions, shaping them purely to one political viewpoint. The House Administration Committee actually stated this aims to have the Smithsonian shaped solely by the views and ideology of one individual as a means of expanding his political power.
And there's precedent for this kind of direct political interference, isn't there? The National Portrait Gallery director?
That's right. Kim Sayjet, the former president, tried to fire her back in May, and she ended up resigning under pressure just 2 weeks later.
Wow.
So it certainly demonstrates a willingness to apply that direct pressure to cultural institutions if they don't align with a particular ideology.
Okay, so we've just seen how executive power is being stretched, maybe tested in some pretty unprecedented ways. Troop deployments of foreign aid, freezes, influencing museums.
Yeah.
But that's just one side of this battle for control, right?
Exactly.
The other side, which is equally crucial, is how the actual rules of electoral engagement are being, well, aggressively reshaped.
Yeah, and the broader implication here, I think, is a clear effort to use institutional power to lock in electoral advantages, maybe regardless of shifts in popular support.
How so?
It's about trying to secure majorities by sort of designing the system, not just by winning over voters election by election.
Okay, give us an example.
Well, a prime example is the ongoing redistricting wars. You know, traditionally, good government groups like Common Cause have always pushed for independent redistricting commissions, fair maps.
Right, that was their whole thing.
That was their whole thing. But now they've had this huge change of heart. They're actually advocating for tit-for-tat gerrymandering in blue states.
Seriously, tit for tat.
Tit for tat. It's framed as a direct strategic response to what they see as maximal gerrymandering happening in red states like Texas, for example.
Wow, that is a huge shift for a group like Common Cause.
It's massive. And this shift isn't just tactical, you know? It kind of reveals a troubling concession, maybe, that in today's political landscape, even groups dedicated to fair play feel forced to adopt the very tactics they normally oppose.
Fighting fire with fire.
Essentially. It's an acknowledgement that the fight, in their view, now requires that. And the real aha moment for you, the listener, might be understanding just how deeply the system seems to have been warped, moving away from those ideals of fair representation.
Mm-hmm.
And Common Cause has even drawn up guidelines for this new approach. They're suggesting things like mid-decade redistricting that's proportional to what red states do with public approval, and this is crucial, no dilution of minority voices, which could get tricky because it might imply racial gerrymandering, something the Supreme Court has outlawed.
Right.
They also still advocate for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and National Independent Commissions long-term, with any new maps expiring with the 2030 census.
And they have criteria for the maps themselves.
Yeah, desirable criteria like districts being compact, you know, not sprawling all over the place, and trying not to split counties unless it's unavoidable.
Okay, so if this battle goes to the absolute max, as they put it, who actually benefits? Does this favor one party over the other?
Well, the analysis suggests it actually favors Republicans overall.
Really? Why?
Because many blue states, like Illinois and Maryland, are described as being almost maxed out on gerrymandering already. There isn't much more room for them to squeeze out extra seats.
Yeah.
Whereas red states like Texas, Florida, Missouri, Ohio, They apparently have more potential seats they could gain through aggressive redistricting.
I see.
California and New York are seen as the big blue treasure troves, but New York's impact would be delayed until 2028 anyway.
And what's the practical effect of all this maximum gerrymandering?
It's pretty startling, actually. It could lead to only a tiny handful of truly competitive House districts nationwide, maybe like 25 out of 435.
Only 25.
Yeah, making most races basically a foregone conclusion before voting even starts. Think about some current competitive seats in states where neither party controls everything, like NC11, PA08, VA01, MI10, AZ01, NV03, KS03, MN02, and just imagine how few of those would be left.
That really changes the nature of House elections.
Um,
And this sounds like it could be part of a larger, maybe more coordinated strategy. I've seen reports about GOP operatives openly discussing a plan to gain, 40 House seats without actually winning more votes?
Yes, that's being discussed quite openly. It's a truly significant plan. A GOP strategist named Alex DeGrasse apparently outlined what he called 3 vectors for achieving this.
3 vectors. Okay, what are they?
Okay, first, partisan gerrymandering, which we just talked about. Texas alone pushing to create maybe 5 new GOP House seats.
Right.
Second, a desired Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act. Specifically, Republicans are hoping for what are called a maximalist ruling on Section 2 of the VRA.
Section 2. That's the part that bans race-based discrimination in voting laws.
Exactly. A maximalist ruling could potentially dilute the voting power of minority voters, maybe effectively eliminating many of those 119 majority-minority districts.
Okay, explain majority-minority districts quickly.
Sure. They're electoral districts drawn specifically so that a racial or ethnic minority group actually makes up the majority of the voting population.
Yeah.
The idea is to make it possible for them to elect representatives they prefer.
Got it. So undermining those could drastically change representation for those communities.
Fundamentally alter it, yeah. The argument being put forward is whether these race-based seats, as they're sometimes called, violate the 14th and 15th Amendments. And it's worth remembering the current Supreme Court, which is Republican-dominated, has steadily chipped away at the VRA over the years, most notably in the Shelby County v. Holder decision back in 2013.
Right. That basically gutted the pre-clearance requirement.
Exactly. So the potential impact here is huge diminishing minority voting power, changing who gets elected. It really could feel like a different set of rules.
Okay, so that's gerrymandering and the VRA challenge.
Yeah.
What's the third vector in this strategy?
The third part is perhaps the most audacious, an unprecedented mid-decade census.
A mid-decade census. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Well, it's not usually. Donald Trump ordered a new one. And Stephen Miller claimed Democrats rigged the 2020 census by including illegal aliens.
Okay.
Arguing that, quote, 20 to 30 House Democrat seats wouldn't exist but for illegal aliens. And Charlie Kirk even suggested this could, quote, subtract 20 electoral votes from Democrats.
Wow. So this mid-decade census, it sounds incredibly ambitious, maybe even legally questionable. Is there any historical or legal basis for this? Or is it mostly a political play?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? Historically, non-citizens have been counted in every census since 1790. The Constitution itself calls for counting the whole number of persons.
The whole number, not just citizens.
Right. And furthermore, federal law explicitly states a mid-decade census cannot be used for apportionment, meaning deciding how many House seats each state gets.
So legally, it sounds pretty shaky.
Highly contentious. It would almost certainly face immediate court challenges. So yeah, you could argue it's primarily a political move designed to create a narrative, maybe justify future actions regardless of its actual legal standing right now.
Okay, so given all these strategies, the gerrymandering, the VRA challenges, this potential mid-decade census, what's the Democratic response been? Are they aware of this?
Oh, they're aware. Texas State Representative Venton Jones, who's the House Minority Whip there, I urged national Democrats to wake up to what he called this bigger plan.
Wake up.
Yeah, and be ready for a major electoral fight. He noted that, quote, they don't always play by the rules. They just change the rules to make it benefit them. It's a direct acknowledgement of the high stakes here.
A very stark warning. Okay, so beyond these legal and legislative battles, these structural fights, there's also the, equally complex battle for hearts and minds, right? What are voters really thinking? And how are parties trying or maybe failing to connect?
Yeah, and this raises another important question, doesn't it? In this world of just information overload where narratives can be shaped so easily, how do parties actually communicate effectively? How do they address the core concerns of an electorate that's diverse and, frankly, sometimes inconsistent.
Right. Well, Sarah Longwell's focus groups with these so-called Biden to Trump voters, B to T voters, offer some really striking insights here.
Yes, I saw that research.
She found that these voters, they already know Trump's flaws. So just pointing them out again and again, it's useless.
Doesn't move the needle.
Exactly. What really stands out is their perception, right or wrong, that Trump is fundamentally for them. While they perceive Democrats as being for minorities, gay people, and trans people, and crucially, not for ordinary white working people. That's the perception she found.
And their number one demand, what did they want most?
Unambiguously, for prices to go down.
The economy. Always the economy.
Trump promises this. Democrats, well, they tend not to make that direct promise, maybe because they know they can't just wave a magic wand and make it happen.
Right, it's complicated. And Senator Bernie Sanders is maybe one of the few voices consistently talking about raising wages as another way to tackle economic pressure.
So Longwell's advice for Democrats was pretty blunt, wasn't it?
Very blunt, basically. Drop all the identity politics stuff and also drop attacking Trump. Instead, she says, focus intensely, laser-like, on making life better for working people.
And there's data backing this up, right? That Wall Street Journal poll.
Yeah, showing only about a third of the electorate has a favorable view of the Democratic Party right now. That makes it incredibly hard to win outside of solidly blue areas.
And what about Kamala Harris? How did these B-to-T voters view her?
Well, some expressed discomfort with the idea of her being, quote, foisted on them without a primary. They felt they didn't really understand her or trust her.
Whereas Trump was clearer on certain issues.
Yeah, Trump was seen as clear, lower prices, deport illegal immigrants. Harris, perhaps due to party divisions, avoided promising lower prices directly and seemed hesitant on the immigration front. And for these specific voters, the focus on issues like DEI, LGBTQ rights, trans issues, it made them feel like Democrats weren't prioritizing their economic worries.
What's also fascinating, though, is how inconsistent voters can be. Almost contradictory sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, many voters say Democrats are too old. But Trump was 78 on Election Day 2024. Harris is 60.
Right.
And they often miss things like Nancy Pelosi stepping down from leadership. It suggests maybe there's a need for younger Democratic nominees in the future. People in their 40s, perhaps.
It's possible, and that inconsistency, it plays out in really personal stories, too. Like, consider Brad Bartell. His wife, a Peruvian immigrant, gets arrested, sent to a detention center for overstaying her visa right after their honeymoon.
Wow.
Yet he still adamantly supports Trump and his policies, says seemingly nothing could change his mind.
That's hard to square.
It is. Or think about farmers. Many Trump-supporting farmers were hit hard financially by his tariffs.
Right, the trade wars.
Yeah, but they still support him, often saying they believe other countries are taking advantage of the U.S.
So the takeaway here is,
well, voters can be inconsistent. What they say doesn't always perfectly align with their personal impact or even their stated preferences sometimes. But that concern about the cost of living, that remains a pretty consistent and major driver for a lot of people.
okay, so this brings us neatly to Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. He seems to be tackling this Democratic messaging challenge in a different way.
Yeah, he apparently made quite an impression on donors and vulnerable House Democrats at a fundraiser out in California.
What was his core message?
Pretty simple and direct. Stick to their values. Faking it doesn't work.
Authenticity.
Authenticity. He cited his own experience vetoing what he called a nasty bathroom bill in Kentucky, a red state, and still winning re-election by 5 points. Proof, he argued, that voters value that authenticity over just political calculation.
And his communication styles.
He advised speaking like a normal person, not like a politically correct campaign consultant, using words like addiction instead of maybe substance abuse disorder, just more direct language.
Interesting. It kind of evokes memories of other moderate, small state governors who became president, doesn't it? Like Carter or Clinton.
It does. A contrast to maybe more overtly progressive nominees like George McGovern in 72 or Walter Mondale in 84, who, suffered huge defeats.
But there was also a warning at that same fundraiser, right, from the pollster David Shore.
Yes. A very blunt warning. Shore apparently told the donors, look, your priorities don't always align with voters' priorities.
Ouch.
Yeah. And he specifically warned that young people, especially non-college men and minorities, are, quote, fleeing the Democratic Party in droves.
Fleeing in droves. That's a stark reality check.
Definitely a wake-up call for the party.
Okay, so we've looked at federal power, electoral strategies, voter mindsets. Let's shift gears slightly one more time. Let's look at another front in this federal-state dynamic. specifically how a state like California is trying to carve out its own path, particularly on environmental issues.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is how creative states are getting in trying to essentially Trump-proof their own policies when federal action is blocked or challenged.
States taking matters into their own hands.
Exactly.
So California has long wanted to enforce its own, often stricter environmental standards. In 2023, they actually got a voluntary deal with 4 big heavy-duty truck manufacturers.
Right, the zero emission standard.
Yeah, to keep meeting California's zero emission standard, regardless of what federal law said.
Right.
But then, the FTC recently declared that agreement unenforceable.
Threw a wrench in the works.
Yeah. So what now for California?
Well, despite that setback, California still has other tools in its toolbox. For instance, they could ban state agencies from buying gasoline-powered trucks after a certain date.
Use their purchasing power.
Exactly. Or they could offer big incentives for private companies to buy electric trucks, make it financially attractive. Or maybe impose a sales tax specifically on gasoline-powered trucks, but not on electric ones. Create an economic disincentive.
Interesting. So using state-level policy levers.
Right. And this kind of coordinated state action, it highlights a really fascinating parallel to federalism, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even as the executive branch might push to centralize power.
Mm-hmm.
Progressive states are increasingly looking for ways to use their collective market strength, their combined economic power, as a kind of de facto regulatory body.
Sort of mini-federal standard-setting group.
Exactly. When the national avenues are blocked, if multiple blue states were to team up and quickly implement similar measures, their sheer market size could seriously encourage truck companies to produce more electric options, even without a formal, enforceable federal deal. It's a real demonstration of decentralized resistance, you could say.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. What does this all mean for you, the listener? We've taken a pretty deep dive into these complex, sometimes unsettling strategies shaping U.S. politics right now.
Yeah, from executive actions really pushing the boundaries of federal power, maybe challenging democratic norms.
To this high-stakes game of electoral engineering, trying to design outcomes, secure majorities for decades, potentially.
Right. And we've also tried to unpack the complex, sometimes contradictory motivations of voters and that ongoing struggle for political parties to really understand and connect with them.
The broader implication, it seems, is pretty clear. The current political climate is defined by this intensifying battle for institutional control.
Yeah, and a willingness by some actors to fundamentally redraw the rules of engagement, often outside those traditional legislative processes we expect. This isn't just about winning the next election cycle. It feels like it's about shaping the very structure of American democracy itself.
And these forces are constantly interacting, aren't they? Creating this really dynamic, often unpredictable environment. So for you, the listener, understanding these underlying currents, these deeper strategies, it's really key to navigating the daily news and forming your own well-informed opinions.
Which really brings us to a final, maybe provocative question to leave you with. In a political landscape where the actual rules of engagement seem increasingly contested and where public perception can be so contradictory, what responsibility does the informed citizen have? How do we critically evaluate how power is being acquired and wielded? And maybe what does true democratic accountability even look like in this new era?